Welcome to the Stories Are Soul Food podcast, presented by Cannonball Books, the kids' fiction imprint of Cannon Press.
Met a ghost of a king on the road when I first fell. Fire burning to my knees I fell. Met a ghost of a king on the road.
Welcome to SASF on this fine, Wednesday afternoon. We're doing this a little out of order.
Yeah.
Last week I was gone. You were gone earlier this week. Functionally.
Yeah, MFA.
Yep.
Yep.
So today we're here. And it's episode what, 116?
I think so.
Ish. Over 100. Right. Welcome to episode over 100 under 150.
Right. It's too low to keep counting again. We made it.
Other people count, right?
Maybe they do.
People who post will count for us.
Yep. And today, it's the time you've been waiting for.
Is it?
We're talking about Jesus Revolution.
We're going to mop up some of the MacArthur conversation, talk about Jesus Revolution, and
even one more question about our athletic episode, Puke or Pass Out, our Puke or Pass Out episode.
Puke or Pass Out.
That was the title we gave it.
Perfect. I made a kid vomit last night.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Nice. Conditioning?
Yeah, and I was a little surprised, actually. He was my nephew. He was one of my track athletes. So he was very recently in very good shape. But we're running up tempo. We're moving to an up tempo offense in basketball, and so we're running a lot. And as we were all coming together at the end, a little team break, he splattered all over the court and splashed to the whole team. I don't know, 4 or 5 guys definitely got damp.
Well, I think that just goes to show you can lose your conditioning pretty quick.
Yeah, or maybe you shouldn't just eat a very large meal right before practice. One or the other.
It's like Michael Scott pounding.
One or the other. So we're going to mop up.
Carbonara.
Let's end with Jesus Revolution. Let's mop up the MacArthur and.
Great. Okay, so first for the Puke or Pass Out one, since we're already into it. Okay, some guy who's my age saying that he feels the pain of not having been in organized sports.
Yeah.
And is wondering, obviously, we're not still playing organized sports. So
the first year I haven't.
There you go. So Nate has the whole time.
Yeah.
I played disorganized sports.
Well, yeah, it depends. I mean, I know. Yeah, I played City League up until this year when I was coaching. And it was like, it had to be about the kids now. Like I couldn't.
Yeah. So his question is just,
fit that in and just couldn't be a priority.
How does he work on that? What do you describe it as? The negative balance he feels that he has, that he is thinking, oh man, I never got pushed in that particular direction. Is that something that in one way, I feel like it's too late to start thinking that way.
Yeah.
You can still push yourself physically.
Yeah, but here's a little negativity and a little positivity all in one. And it's a lot of people who play organized sports and got really pushed by coaches and so on still haven't built the muscle to make themselves do it.
Yeah.
They've only built the muscle to do it when somebody's yelling at them or blowing a whistle. And
yeah, I remember a lacrosse coach over and over saying, you think you're tough now.
Right.
But that's because I'm right here.
Yelling at you.
At you. And you will never do it.
Yeah, my brother-in-law.
Your brother-in-law.
Being an ex-Marine lacrosse coach.
He's like, you think you're cool, but you will never do this on your own unless you get your mind right.
And that's actually not a thing that the team can get you to.
No.
And that's one of the things I try to push my athletes on is what will you do on your own time? Yeah. And it's not only because the team will benefit the most because you invested in your own time. There's no point at a high level of competition. You can't show up to the season and expect to learn stuff, pick up skills or be in condition or anything like that. You have to show up ready and you have to have gotten ready on your own. And one of the reasons why I push that is just pragmatically, it improves the team. But in terms of lifelong lessons, it's somebody has to go do it in a gym by themselves when no one's watching. Yeah. And that ability is the hardest thing to pick up. Right. And so plenty of people go through team sports and never get that ability. Most people go through team sports and don't get the benefits. They get the bickering, they get the selfishness, they get this, they get all the negative cultural aspects. So it's not like team sports are just some Band-Aid that's going to fix character. They just won't.
Yeah.
It provides an opportunity. It provides stress and pressure and an opportunity to grow as a character, but you don't have to.
Right. I think that opportunity is a great word.
Yeah.
You use the conveyor belt of pottery going past.
The mugs that go past.
You're trying to make it. Yeah. Team sports is a great chance when you get a chance to take a lot of swings.
But for somebody who didn't get that, just know that the baton of team sports has to be passed to the individual for the fruit to ever arrive. If you can't go push yourself, and I mean at 2 a.m. when you have to get up and change diapers, if you can't push yourself when the blizzard went, your husband, the blizzard went and drifted your sidewalk over again and you just shoveled it. I'm talking about getting laid off and the whole family depending on you, looking at you, being like, how are we going to eat?
Right.
If you though, that's where those things show up then in a way that matters. Right. Yeah. So the ability to work out in the gym is that right there has no value. And actually I'm overstating this, but it has no value in and of itself.
Yeah. Because Paul says it availeth a little.
Yeah, right.
So it has a little value.
But the point is, it has value in that it equips you for the moments that matter.
Right.
That moment doesn't matter except for the fact that you're practicing to flake or practicing to follow through later. Yeah. So it does avail a little. I don't disagree with the apostle, but of itself, for its own sake, right. It doesn't have value for its own sake. It has value for all of the other aspects of life that matter. So if somebody didn't get team sports, they can be like, man, I wish I'd gotten team sports. And I get that. Mm-hmm. I feel that completely. But you can still step in and pick up where team sports would leave off, which is just the ability to make yourself go past your own threshold. Right. To make yourself keep going when your body says, hey, I'm done now. Yeah. And saying, nope, I'm actually gonna go. Yeah. And it doesn't much matter what that is. It can be chopping wood. It doesn't have to be.
Or how many guys ran a lot during practices and have never done it again. Never done something physical like that again.
Yeah, and even when they do, they don't do it the way they did it in practices. They go jogging. Yeah. They go jog mileage or they do something that's slow and steady and you settle in. They don't do sprint circuits that make them vomit. Or they
okay, I haven't done that.
Or they actually toggle into, CrossFit culture, CrossFit community, gym culture. I'm a gym bro now. And they get into that and they think it has value for itself, for its own sake. And it doesn't have value for its own sake. Right. It's supposed to make you, the value is making you more sacrificial, making you capable of driving yourself into places where self-preservation has no voice. Yeah. That self-preservation, that's it. You're training yourself to be able to throw away self-preservation and to sacrifice yourself. Right. That's it.
And it's really interesting that our gym bro culture is about the self because it's goes on
it's
Instagram.
Exactly. So it's peacocks. Yeah. So you see guys who want to be strong, and that's great. They want to maximize. They want to be good stewards. Who want to maximize what God's given them. Yeah. Or they just enjoy it, and that's fine. It's fine.
I mean, sometimes you got to lift a fridge, and if you do it well, that's much better than if you got to call 5 guys to help you.
Exactly. So there's nothing wrong with enjoying lifting, enjoying working out. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with doing it for strength. There's nothing wrong with doing it for recreation.
Yeah, and we all coach because we think kids should.
Yeah, but there is something wrong with doing it for vanity, doing it for your plumage, your peacocking, and guys who are peacocking are getting no benefit. It's kind of exactly like praying on a street corner. We can just look at them and say, you have your reward. You have flexed in front of the mirror in the gym. Yeah. You have your reward. That's it. It peaked right there.
Yeah. I mean, looking back, I'm remembering one of my buddies, a sign of things going poorly was that starting to post selfies of himself after working out. And you can kind of watch.
As soon as that happens, you're like, okay, who's this about?
Right. And then you see the doubling down that happens. It's not that you can't post a selfie of yourself, but that doubling down on selfie posting, I think there you see where they're getting their reward and where the interest is coming from. It's the compound interest is on the attention and on themselves, not on the muscles.
And the gnarliest physical experiences I've ever had all happened with one or no witnesses. It's like, it's like there's one time roofing my house, the tar paper tore underneath me. I was on the peak, and I just went into a baseball slide down over a brick patio, and it was a 2-story drop. It was going to be something, and the sheeting was off, and I successfully got 2 fingers in a truss and swung off the edge. Like, actually, I was
and no
sore.
one saw it.
Yeah, I was like up, and then slammed back down to the wall and climbed back up. And
Wow.
I was not roped off. And
OSHA should not listen to our podcast.
that adrenaline level, and then the soreness and the strain. Like I pulled stuff in my fingers and my forearm, and it just, it's like, okay, that was. And I sat up there being like, man, like whoa. But it's the thing is now it would, the response would be selfie. Like, guys, so gnarly. Almost just, everybody.
Yeah, I think.
Join me, won't you? I just had a moment.
It'd be cool. I would listen to that. So I guess I can't totally complain.
Instead, I had a conversation with God.
Yeah.
Let's just say there was a prayer of thanksgiving offered up there with my kids down.
Along with a question.
My kids were downstairs, and my wife was making lunch, and just like, I'm really glad I'm still here.
I wonder why, you're asking God, now why? Let's figure out the lesson now so that I don't have to do this again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a common prayer in my life. But it is, all this to say is when you exit a team sport or something like that, you've been given a lot of experience and sensation and things you can use or not use.
Yeah.
But you have to run with it afterwards. And the only value for lifelong value, is the ability to throw away self-preservation and make yourself sacrifice.
Yeah.
And that's something that an individual can do.
It's the theme of our podcast.
That's there we go. And that's something that an individual can do without team sports.
Right.
And that's something that somebody who's done team sports still has to do as an individual. So you're not like, you haven't been given an advantage,
right,
but you still are just learning, what everybody else is learning as well.
Right. And I sit here having not worked out in far too long.
Yeah, but here's the thing. This is
a great quote from your dad too.
Yeah. So this is he talks about. Yeah, he does. He covered it really well. When you have played a lot of sports and when you've been athletic, sometimes the more sacrificial thing to have to do is stop.
Oh, I'm going to use that.
No, I mean, but this absolutely the truth. Yeah. And it actually dings your vanity. It dings your pride. Like your body is, experiencing entropy and decay, and you are. Now, it's not to say that it's just impossible, but there are periods of time, and there's phases of a dad's life when he absolutely is sitting here looking at a choice of making himself feel better,
right,
and look better, or be more present for Rugrats playing t-ball in the backyard.
Yep,
and there are times, it's not always an either or, but there's just times when a dad actually has to sacrificially have a dad bod. Like that is actually, it's not, he's not doing that dad bod for himself. Plenty of dad bods are just the result of living for oneself, and selfishness. But there's ways in which going and being in the gym and just grinding all the time to make sure you stay super fit. There's ways in which that can be really unhealthy and self-centered. But honestly, and I'll just put a bow on it this way: we are humans, and we're capable of screwing up every single way we go. If you aren't exercising, it can be laziness and everything else. If you are, it can be vanity and self-absorption. We're capable of turning any virtue into a vice really quickly.
Right.
So to say, I am sacrificing by being here with my kids and not lifting, that's super easy to say when the harder thing would be to go, go exercise. We're capable of, we're dudes, we're sons of Adam, and we're capable of screwing this up no matter which way we go.
Yeah,
so,
it's funny. Paul says,
so just don't exercise, let's not screw it up.
Godliness with contentment is great gain. That one works. Can't screw up that one.
Because I could say, man, if I put in the same amount of time I'm putting into coaching, if I put that into my own fitness, I would be in so much better condition. But here's the thing: if I wasn't coaching, I wouldn't. I would put it into writing and reading.
Yeah.
It's like it would be mental. So I could say I'm sacrificing for the children, but the truth is,
imagine how cut I would be.
Yeah, just if I was cut. and that's kind of how it works. But hey, I've got weights outside my office now, so no excuses.
Right. Hashtag.
Something I can look at.
Yeah.
And say, hey, weights, as I walk into my office.
Okay. Next question. Couple questions about our MacArthur Gospel of Winning episode, which was
phenomenal.
I'm
pretty sure it was good.
Yeah. So this is from a mom saying she was wondering how we thought about honoring fathers and understanding proper authority fits into our MacArthur discussion. And she's saying, I think because as a mom, I hear you saying not be an easy person to like don't be the person who fits in perfectly. And here's that just how do I adjust to that and have my son not be an easy person to fit in, but also is still someone who, like, how do they interact with the dad? How do they interact with authority? So I guess she's hearing us say, be difficult, teach your son to be a person who's got edges and still balance with a kid that you want to be around.
Okay. I'm wondering what we talked about.
Right. I think mostly it came from, we had the discussion about school and how why boys are often institutionally not friendly.
Yep.
Girls are institutionally friendly. How does that jive? And we were saying, that's good. You don't want that tendency in a boy to not be institutionally friendly is something you should nurture rather than something you should quash.
Yeah, but it's the
or maybe we need to just re-clarify that whole episode.
No, I think it was perfect. I remember it not at all, so it must have been perfect. Yeah. I would say that if I understand the question correctly, the goal is to teach boys to be respectful and to have self-control. And actually, I do remember this. I remember you jumping up and down on that. Self-control is absolutely essential. Without it, you're done. You're destroyed.
Yeah.
But you don't want adolescent children to, it's okay if a toddler is worried, hey, if I get out of my bed and sneak out of my room, if they have fear of dad.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
But you don't want a 15-year-old to have fear of dad. You don't want a 16-year-old to have fear of dad. You want them to have respect for dad. And why do they and ideally, dad is respectable. That's the ideal situation. It's easy to respect dad. But ultimately, we give people respect because we fear God, and that's it. We control ourselves and we honor our fathers and our mothers because we fear God.
Yeah.
Not because we fear them. Mm-hmm. When we honor the government, it's not out of fear. The ruling authorities, it's because we fear, it is out of fear, but only for God.
Rightly ordered authority.
Yeah, it's only for God, and God wants me to be submissive here, so I am submissive here. Because all submission is ultimately to God. This is in marriage too. So a woman who's following her husband's leadership is not doing so because he's so magnificent. She's doing so because to do so honors her Father in heaven. And that it's God's desire. And he says, I will bless it. Here's the cheat code. Do this and I will bless you. And so you're doing that out of obedience to God. You're not doing it out of some fear of his anger or frustration or anything like that, if it's a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
So with boys especially, you want them to be intelligent, strategic, fearless, but they have to have a bridle on that they have access to. They have to be able to self-govern, self-regulate. They have to have that self-control. And I think this comes from, and it can be instilled by parents, one of two ways. And I think the bad way is whenever moms especially, but dads do it too, whenever humans do it, whenever moms try to discipline based on how the behavior made them feel, it is horrible. This is, and I see this all the time.
Yeah.
This just pains me. This hurts me. This grieves me. Don't you know how this makes my life hard? You tore up my daffodils. That took me all Saturday afternoon. I'm upset because it causes me more work instead of like seeing the opportunity to pull the weeds in this little kid, and work for this little kid's sake, actually sit down and run scenarios and what happened, how this happened, and get the discipline rightly ordered and completely away from your own hurt feelings and your own emotions.
Because what you actually taught the kid is that in a situation of stress, I look to my own feelings to regulate.
And the thing to worry about is how mom feels, not what is God's standard and how do I honor God. And so showing your kids how you honor God with your self-control is, I mean, that's the most important thing. So when they do the thing that should infuriate you, and yet you have the brakes, you have the bridle on your own emotions, and you are not infuriated. Like you're able to address the situation, having completely removed the variable of your own emotional reaction. Like how you are emotionally reacting to the situation is irrelevant to the whole thing. Now that's really hard to do, but that is the best way. So if you want them to have self-control, you have self-control, and you don't ever put your emotions in authority over them. Like, ever.
That's great.
Because if you do, you're showing them that they're an authority over you as well. And why wouldn't they have their emotions, in authority? How they'll start to pattern their behavior with siblings and friends the same way, governing, regulating, controlling people via hurt feelings and emotional reactions and so on. So it's really important that parents have that self-control, that teachers have that self-control, that administrators have that self-control, that they control themselves. They are never sitting down being stern and upset with somebody. You have upset me, and so you're in trouble. Like, it's like, this is, I had my kid flicked some water through the back of a tent at a track meet. Not a lot of water, but walking by the back of a track meet tent, flicked it between two panels and hit some, opposing athlete with some drops of water. He went by. My son was there when it happened, and I made the two of them run an extra 400 meter uphill. We did a mile of uphill sprints, and they had 2,000 meters. But we ran scenarios. Like, okay, so just like think before you act. How does this go? What happens if somebody walks by your tent and flicks water on one of your teammates? How should you have responded? So you're inviting other people to respond this way. It could turn into this whole escalating, situation. Yeah. So we discipline, but we also scenario it. Like, what are you asking for? What are you inviting? What do you actually want? Like, you were bored, and so you made a dumb decision, and we disciplined that.
Right.
But I did not get upset. I did not talk about how that makes me look. I did not talk about how that reflects on me, the coach. I did not talk about any of that. I didn't get my emotions involved. It was just, let's be really clinical about this. What could have happened? What should have happened if it happened to one of your teammates? And let's scenario this, learn from it, and then let's actually mark the moment with some physical pain running up the hill so you remember. Like this is, but none of this is like, come on. It's like I'm not upset. That way, my own emotions. Now, I will get on people. I will get on athletes. I did last night. But when I do that, I'm only doing it when I'm looking at it and thinking, man, what these guys need right now is a coach who will yell at them and tell them how weak they are. It's like that's what they need from me. This is what will benefit them. It's not because I have this baking soda volcano of emotions and I have to let it out.
Right.
So it's not me expressing my emotions. It's me calculating what I am in their lives right now and how I can help them break through this moment. And then as a father, watching your son push back with a good objection or an interesting contribution, that's not the thing we're talking. I mean, that's great. You love the iron sharpening iron. You can tell when your kid's mouthing off versus when your kid is like, now, Dad, you said this, but how does that balance with this thing over here? The other thing is, especially with boys and moms, when they want, and there's a real slippery thing that happens where the kid ends up sitting in the judgment seat and mom has to convince them, and they can sit there and say, I don't understand. You have to keep working. Like, I don't see it. And arguing and so on. And
we have to have a whole episode about
we'll
kids
do that.
in the driver's seat.
But
not today.
Put a pin in that. But that's mom can get sucked into like trying to convince Johnny, like trying to make Johnny want to do something. Don't make Johnny want to do it. Johnny's just got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that's it. And it's very much like you can talk to your dad about it later. Like you can ask dad when he's home, but right for now, we're not having this conversation and you're just doing it. Yep. And you're doing it because your mom told you to, and God says to obey your mom. So that's your logic. Do you understand that much? Do you have, they might get all Cartesian and get into epistemological uncertainty and other things. I don't know that you're my mother. But that's the kind of kid that I was. But it's, in that syllogism, like, let me explain for you the situation. I'm your mother. I told you to do this. God wants you to obey your mother. And if you want to understand more about why I'm telling you this, you can talk to your dad later. Yep. And just move on, but
ask me after you finish the task.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about it when it's neutral.
Yeah.
After the fact, we'll talk
Miraculously, through it. The desire to talk about it often disappears after the room is clean.
Yeah, exactly. But again, mom, really, really carefully avoid trying to leverage how you feel about the moment into action, especially from your sons.
That's great.
Don't do it. Okay, anyway, that's the MacArthur question, was parenting.
Yeah, Yep, it was.
Okay.
We have another MacArthur question, but I don't know that we have time.
Let's at least throw a rock at it while we run past.
So I grew listening to the MacArthur episode, Gospel of Winning. I grew up on Narnia, so I'm wondering about your argument that from a storytelling perspective, postmillennialism is the only winning way that works. What would you say about The Last Battle's way of telling the story? It seems like a very compelling story to me.
It's not, but it's really good at the scene and chapter level.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of eschatology, he's just trying to end his series and close off the possibility of any sequels. So the world ends. So in a 7-book series, we go from the creation of the world to the ending of the world. And how many dynasties did we have? How many? It's such a, it's a fruit fly kingdom. It's a little fruit fly universe there, and is not allegorically connected. Now, in terms of the character work and a lot of the stuff in The Last Battle, I really love it. And I love the picture of heaven and the resurrection, but I don't think it's his strongest. And I would say that it is his weakest of the series. And I think that,
not because I hate it, but
every 8-year-old who's ever read the series knows that.
Right.
That this is the weakest one because of the way it closes off.
Yep.
So
Tyrion and Jewel being such cool characters and then
amazing,
failing, or I think that is, the way that he's set up their storyline is a failure.
Yeah, but it also didn't have to be. It's all winnable, and they just lose anyway. Which is like, okay, the resurrection's great, the eschaton's great, but Narnia was lost and destroyed.
Yep.
So. And it was like he was done now. He tied it off and that was it. And
plus, again, if we're buying our theory, it's Saturn, right? So
the
end of
which I don't care about. But that, it makes sense. By the time he wrote that one, it might have been his plan.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. But it is not the best, and yet you will gain a ton from reading it.
Sure. It also opens with that awesome sort of beast fable, the shift puzzle beast fable, which goes on for far too long, but it's still something that you refer back to regularly.
Yeah. The Last Battle to me is like an amazing meal served at the wrong time of day.
It's good.
It's like it's 11 a.m. and look at this amazing dinner I've made. Yeah. I'm like, okay. Like it's just, it's just out of sync a little. But it is still pretty magnificent, and all the, the page level craft and character work. So
yeah. So are you saying it would be a better book if it had a better ending?
It'd be a better series if The Last Battle was completely reconstructed.
Nice. There we go.
Yeah,
we threw a rock at it,
and we ran past.
We will hear yelping, but
will we?
I think so. I think a lot of people like The Last Battle. I'm not sure why.
I like The Last Battle.
A lot of people think.
I don't dislike it. It just.
You just said Narnia could be better, though.
Yeah, I did. Let me actually even rephrase. much better.
Okay, perfect. Here we are. You guys have been waiting long and patiently for a lamp on.
But I've not been long and patient on this. I've been impatient. I've been impatient and scoldy.
Nate has gone above and beyond to try and make this episode, and yet, similar to Narnia, it ends in failure. Although not, because we're about to have the episode now.
Yeah, no, we're succeeding. I just wanted to have John Irwin on to talk about it. And John Irwin is, John, what should I say about you? He's flaked on me incredibly on this one. There you go, John.
Let's say he's difficult to motivate to appear on this podcast.
No, I think the motivation has been there. It's just that he's got other things to do every time we've had him scheduled. Like this, it's just the nature of it. He's shooting a lot of aliens. He's in that really intense part of the video game where the aliens are all coming out from every corner. So when we pencil in the podcast and he's like, yes, I'll do it. And we do it. We schedule him like 5-6 times. Every time it comes, the moment comes, there's some alien trying to squeeze the life out of him that he has to deal with. So I can't really hold it against him, but
we can.
I'm going to.
You may, perhaps you shouldn't.
I'm going to tell him at least he owes me somehow. But we are freer to talk about it now. And and what I wanted to really emphasize is the need to assess things based on their highest and best use and what their intention is, like what they exist for. And so it's interesting to talk about Jesus Revolution in terms of faith film. Yeah. Like this is a faith film in the faith market. And what is a faith film? What makes we all kind of know, but what makes it a faith film? What makes it not a faith film?
Yeah.
And the craft of this one is really interesting because Jesus Revolution is incredibly slow.
Yep.
And yet pulls you right in, and you ride along in this really interesting moment in time and get to see the weirdness of the whole moment. And then also to kind of realize that it changed our country and then didn't stop. It's not like it all went away.
Yeah.
All these churches, all these large churches are the downstream fruit of this moment, including our own,
Yeah.
And it's,
I just went to the memorial today of a guy who was, Larry Cernick was doing the Jesus Revolution thing in Oregon.
Yep.
He was a pastor at one of these. And so it's interesting to be in that story still.
Yeah, we're still here. Our church was in a body shop. You go in, the deacons, or who probably didn't have any deacons, the guys who got there first would hose the floor down. There'd be frogs going in the corners of this big place, and we had church in the body shop. And we'd have church in the park. We'd have church wherever. The pastor pieced out one week, and my dad was stuck up front with a guitar, having led the music. And that's how my father became a pastor, is because the pastor bolted. And in classic zero structure chaos of the Jesus People movement. And the next Sunday, nobody else was up front. So my dad just had to preach because he was still up there with the guitar. And he kept trying to find other guys to do it and failed to find anybody else to do it, and is still the pastor of that church, which has now birthed a denomination. It's it's kind of remarkable, or helped birth. It was, I think it's, I can say birthed. It birthed the denomination.
We're talking about churches birthing, so it's acceptable.
It's and then the educational movement that came out of that, everything else, the schooling that I received, that everybody who's done any classical Christian education received, that all came out of the work in that one body shop hippie church. And so it is really interesting to see this moment in time told really well and patiently, but in a very forward moving. It's not like it stagnates. It moves forward and it carries you really well through the film, but it's not in a rush. It does it patiently, and it's definitely kind of Malick informed, in terms of what Terrence Malick does in Tree of Life and other things, where, trying to create mood and impressions with really, weirdly lit or gauzy or, blown out shots or things like that.
Also non-realistic, like his baptism scene, where all of a sudden we pop to a different place and time.
Yeah.
That felt very Malick as well.
It's impressionistic in what it's trying to do, but it's impressionistic realism and sticks closer to realism than Malick does.
Right.
But what, the way Malick represents memory, the impression of moments that have passed, impression of moments from years before is definitely kind of informed the palette of that film, but in a far more commercial and effective way. So it's kind of like taking the strong flavors from, somewhere and introducing the spices to a culture that doesn't actually, isn't familiar with them.
Yeah. I mean, as far as faith films go, there's something that you usually go to and feel underwhelmed afterwards. Yeah. But Christy and I watched this one, and Christy thought, I think this is probably the best Christian movie I've seen. Just as a faith film, it's just, let's have more of that.
Yeah. And if I was going to try to find a better quote unquote Christian movie, a better faith film, it'd be Chariots of Fire. And
that's great company for Jesus Revolution.
It's like that's Chariots of Fire, Jesus Revolution are right up there. But that then begs the question of what is a faith film?
Because we've before said Spirited Away is the best Christian movie.
It's animated.
Best, Christian animated.
Come on, man. Come on.
Oh, wait. Yeah, I'm totally mixing that up.
Don't hold me to stuff like that.
You're stuck in my...
Let me pop off and not be accountable.
Hold on.
So it's, in this case, like, what do you think it is that makes a movie a faith film?
I mean, I think we'd have to say that the gospel becomes a focus of the film. It is the motivating or animating theme of the film. Right? So personal evangelical salvation. And that becomes an animating feature of the characters. So Chariots of Fire, Little and his decisions are driven by his faith.
Yeah.
And the movie's about that, and contrasted with a man who doesn't have that.
Yeah, but gets it.
But the Abraham guy.
Yeah, Abram. Yeah.
Yeah, Abram. So I think, and then it's easier with Jesus Revolution because it's all about two people finding the gospel and a third person reconnecting with her dad. So
yeah, and I will say this about Chariots of Fire, because I don't know that we've talked about it before, but we'll throw it here, and I know it's been talked about, is Chariots of Fire, a lot of people just miss it. They think it's a sports movie about one guy who was a Christian and one guy who wasn't. But Harold Abrams is on this Ecclesiastes journey of trying to matter. He's bitter, he's angry, he's full of resentment, and that's his drive. He's got this Michael Jordan drive to be the fastest, to be the best. And I took that personal. I'm offended. I'm hurt. It's that kind of rage that he's built that enables him to run really quickly. But then there's this guy who's also wicked fast and is one of the best in the world and is just joyful. He's just happy. And so the competitor who is driven by fury and resentment, that's the fuel he's putting into his tank, versus the guy who is feeling God's pleasure and running from joy and doing impossible things, like just really accomplishing impossible things. We tell that story, we follow that story, and most people don't pick up on the fact that this is a conversion story, because they don't show.
Oh, I remember you talking about this.
Yeah, they don't show it, but we do open at Harold Abrams' funeral, and he's having a Christian funeral in a church, and he's a Jew. So the rest of the story, we see this frustrated, like really highly motivated, high achieving Jewish character next to this joyful, playful, exuberant Christian character. And we have all the friction of their dynamic when we follow these two threads. But the film is started with an announcement of the resolution. And it's subtle enough that most people miss that fact, that this is the story of the cause of Harold Abrams' conversion. The cause of his conversion is his just insatiable drive for greatness that actually only gets him ash. It's just ash. It's nothing compared to what this other guy has next to him. And so that's why I slot Chariots of Fire there. But I can understand, it's kind of like saying Die Hard's a Christmas movie. It creates all sorts of it creates all sorts of issues. And so the argument that Chariots of Fire is not a faith film is very practical and is simply the fact that it was not marketed as such.
Right.
And a faith film, as far as the world is concerned, is simply a choice made by executives of whether or not to try to motivate the movie-going public based on faith loyalties and faith curiosities to come to the theater.
Yeah.
It is a marketing decision.
Not so much the content.
Not so much the content, because the very same people going to the movies also go watch Marvel movies. They also go watch other movies. It's a marketing decision about how to lever and motivate. And so the content of the film has to basically reach a threshold that enables that lever.
Yeah.
And that's just the practicalities, like how it's marketed. And so you need to have things in there that will do that. I've been lectured by secular executives on how my stuff needs to have more explicit conversion scenes and things like that, or else they won't market it as a faith movie. And I'm the believer talking to a secular infrastructure, when they're
right,
when they're pushing that. So my stuff is not. I don't write Christian fiction, like in scare quotes.
Yeah.
I'm a Christian who writes fiction. Now, when Lecrae says that about rapping, everybody sees him trying to distance himself from something. But the thing is, I'm actually just trying to make good, wholesome food, which means the architecture is Christian, but the marketing lever is not.
Yeah.
The marketing tag is not, hey, this is a Sunday school class. And so it's therefore not Christian fiction, even though it is written by a Christian and is consistent with Christian themes and values and virtues and all that kind of stuff. So if we're getting into what makes something actually a faith film, as far as we're concerned, I think something that actually where the film itself is tackling the themes of conversion and gospel.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like, I recently had a conversation with a CEO of a streamer about this exact thing. And my comment was that if you're trying to feed the faith market, just realize that communion is great, but every meal doesn't have to be communion. In fact, there's 3 a day for the rest of the week that aren't communion. Like it matters, but don't just try to.
So we don't have to have every single. That's why when I was trying to answer your question, evangelical feels like the answer. Does the movie feel evangelical? That good news coming to repentance, and they don't all have
even
to
there,
do
if
that.
the movie feels evangelical, or if the movie itself has the agenda of evangelism, that's actually that's deep in the faith market, right?
Yeah.
By the time you're trying to evangelize or whatever, but if the movie itself and the way screenplays work is very early on in the movie, there's going to be a statement, a theme normally, and that theme is debated and explored. And it's debated and explored like throughout. If the movie itself is an exploration and discussion, debating themes of, Christian theology, conversion, regeneration, the gospel, God's work, in this world, then I think you have a faith film. It's like if the actual substance discussed. And so Jesus Revolution is really a question of, is this for me? Is this for everyone? What is the gospel? What does it do? But it's also an exploration of a moment in history, a moment in time.
Yeah.
But that moment in time was defined by this, this amazing revival moment that was kind of out of control and unruly and weird, unbathed and a little bit strung out. So I really enjoyed the film, and I thought it was really, really well made because it was honest in its exploration of what the gospel did in this moment. It wasn't a rah pep rally.
Mm-hmm.
It actually, explored messiness and brokenness and but still represented the new birth as the solution. It wasn't trying to be secular in its perspective, but it also was honest,
right,
in its exploration.
Didn't
and
have
really
the
well
fake,
crafted.
Yeah, the fake gloss that sometimes you have of where all the good characters are super good and all the bad characters are bad, and we keep those sidelines the whole way through.
Yeah,
I like the realism there. I mean, it also made sense why it was so popular, as it is the story of 3 different kids getting back together with their parents. And the parents don't come out looking terrible, and neither do the kids.
The parents were broken.
Right.
The parents were broken in different ways. The kids were broken in different ways. And there's these different restorations.
Yeah, and it gets restored at the end, which I can see why people heading into this are expecting, what's her name? Kathy's dad. You're expecting. No, sorry, that's the mom. Oh, now I'm mixing my names up. It's been too long. Yeah, no, Kathy and her dad. Yeah. So Greg's girlfriend. You expect the dad to be kind of a paper cutout, like, hey, stay away from my daughter. I want you to, and just a real loser. But it turns out there actually is a little depth they try to explore behind him. And
he was probably the least explored of the parent figures, but
correct.
But still great.
I just remember being surprised because I'm so used to that Disney trope of the dad who why are you visiting these concerts?
I'll show you.
Right. Yeah. And then you realize, he's worried about his daughter overdosing.
Rightly
worried.
Yeah. He's rightly worried.
Right.
And it's, I think the film was fantastic, but there's no question of it being a faith film.
Right.
And I think that a faith film is we already talked about genre, but I think a faith film hitting the threshold of faith film, it tends to be one of the cheapest and worst genres.
Yeah.
It tends to be bad because all you're trying to do is hit a threshold that enables you to lever the devoted base. And so
manipulated.
Yeah. It's interesting because they cared about the quality of the film as opposed to caring about hitting a threshold of faith interest sufficient to have a big marketing machine tell everybody you have to go watch this now.
Right.
And that's normally what it is. It's really exploitive. It's kind of
it feels like it. And I've been burned enough that I would never go watch this movie.
I haven't been burned. I've avoided them.
Oh, you
watch a trailer.
I just head into it.
I'm not going to watch this. This is because I'm being levered by my bonds of you have to watch this.
Yeah.
If you're a conservative, you have to watch this political documentary. I'm not going to watch it. If you're a Christian, you must support this endeavor. Send a message to Hollywood. We need more faith.
Right.
Just stop. If that's the marketing campaign, I'm just not interested.
Yep.
And that wasn't the story of the story here. It's a different kind of push. And I really admired that it was not made on any kind of faith film formula, and faith film formulas very much exist.
Yeah.
It wasn't following that. And it was a 3-pointed exploration of kid and parent. These 3 different, but it's also all set in this moment of time, which is about a revival and is about people seeking truth and this bizarre moment when the Spirit was moving.
And overlapping it with the hippies.
Yeah.
Taking the hippies and saying, now they had a point.
Yep.
They had a point. So let's explore. I just thought it was very honest to a lot of people's motivations. Even down to the level of, you're watching what Lonnie Frisbee does and thinking, man, that guy's weird.
Yep.
And then the movie's like, yeah, he's weird.
Yeah.
Honestly, saying, it would be difficult to work with Lonnie for longer than 4 years or however long it was. No, I guess way shorter.
It'd be a little tough.
Right.
But yeah, it's a really well-made film. And I think that we struggle so we're both involved in content creation, right? We're both involved in wanting to put out more quote unquote Christian content in the world, but we need to back off of that because content does not repent and cannot be baptized. It's like the question is, do we put just simply wholesome meals in the world?
Yeah.
Do we put food on the plate that is from God, will edify, will build people up and be healthy for them? Like, will in fact be a good and inspiring meal. It can be Wednesday lunch and be made by Christians with the intent to glorify God, to feed people, to serve people, to motivate and inspire people, and not be Sunday morning. Like, we can have great content made by Christians. In fact, most of it should be.
Yeah.
I think the ratio should probably be pretty similar to the ratio of life. Now, I know I've got friends who are busily going to mass every single day, and I understand the theological underpinnings for why they get pulled into that need. But we don't actually need that level of rhythm. It's like we do need to eat thrice daily under normal circumstances, like through the week. And at the very least, we then need to go worship and be fed. It's like there on Sunday. Now, should the word be present through the rest of the week? Absolutely. We should be Christians all week, living out our faith all week. But I can tell you a fantasy story about, it could be 100 cupboards or whatever, about this boy lost in the cupboards in this battle with ancient evil and everything else. And it doesn't have to boil down to a Sunday school moral. It just has to be built on truth, goodness, and beauty in a way that actually imitates what God does.
People are used to Canon Press publishing Christian content, but when you move into our fiction, it's not faith fiction.
Yeah.
I think we maybe have one or two that you'd count.
I don't even know that we do. Like, do we? What would you say?
I guess Kill the Dragon is the only one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, but that's kind of allegorical,
right? So I don't know that. Yeah. And so we've actually had a lot of people not upset, but questioning. Hey, why does this movie or why does this book not do the faith thing? Why isn't there a conversion? And I know you have. I've had in customer service emails defended Nate's books before.
Yeah, it's funny because out in the world when I was gallivanting around promoting books with Random House, there's this weird mix of getting attacked for being too Christian and getting attacked for not being Christian. Like I've had the hard fundies really get upset at me and come after me and try to boycott me because my books aren't quote unquote Christian enough. And then I've had the left run really strong campaigns to try to get me canceled before cancellation was even a thing. It's like one of the reasons why I went all in on Canon Press way back in the day was to try to build a cancel-proof infrastructure where I could continue to write and produce if I need to, when eventually I am just banned from New York and LA, which will at some point happen. So I'm surprised that it hasn't. Yeah. But it hasn't. I'm still able to, but I know it's coming. I know it's coming. And I knew it was coming from very early, probably 2008, 2009, when people were campaigning to get Random House to drop me for being an evangelical. They didn't explain it even any more than that.
Wow.
And there are other wild slanders, but that was it. That was the only thing they needed me to not be, was evangelical. And it's interesting to say, like, why isn't this communion every time I hand somebody a chocolate chip cookie? That's like, well, because you know what? God made the world a little broader than that. And this is fantastic. Like he invented these flavors for us to discover and offer kids with milk. It's like, this is, when you perfectly reverse sear a tri-tip or something like that. And then somebody looks at you and says, but is this communion?
The only answer is to like shove it
into
their mouth.
Like, no, it's not.
But you have to taste it.
But all of this goodness, all truth, goodness, and beauty is downstream from and imitative of our Father in heaven and everything he made, and is all blessed and even possible through Christ. So,
and what communion has become is this spiritually healthy?
Yeah.
And at that point, the answer is yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Is this spiritually good is this good for, and put it this way, is this good for the whole man? Is this good?
Right.
Mind, body, soul. Yes.
Because he made it,
Yeah. Is this good across the board? Is this true? Is this good? Is this beautiful? Is what you should be asking when people are serving a normal meal of narrative inspiration, a narrative meal. And I actually think it's really important that families eat together, break bread together, but it's also important that they do that with their narrative meals. So you want to have families sit down and break bread together when they're consuming soul food. Stories are soul food, but you also, just as much as when they're sitting down having Saturday night dinner together.
Right.
Commune. Like it is, you can commune without being in communion. You are still one body and you're still eating together, breaking bread together, thanking God together, questioning what you're seeing, asking what it's saying and is it true, engaging, getting stronger, and using these meals to be improved and to grow. Mm-hmm. And so why do we tell fantasy stories? Why do we publish fiction at all, because we're a restaurant. And that's, what restaurants do. We're not just a Christian GNC selling vitamins and protein powders to very specifically address faults and failings. We do that too. There's a lot of direct practical Christian teaching. There's a lot of direct instruction. There's a lot of Sunday school, but there has to be more than that. There has to be just meals and the breaking of bread as well.
Okay, so applying that to Jesus Revolution, do you think the animating, I was looking at the movie, do you think the animating feature or animating theme of that movie is an exploration of, can you do whatever you want? Because it seems like both, it's like structure, it's rigor versus freedom. It's the hippie versus the square, but applied to religion, right? Isn't that kind of the tension the movie opens with? Because we have Chuck and his church, and he has a number who are not willing for the hippies. And then Lonnie also is on the other side. So Lonnie wants there to be absolutely no restriction. So in that sense, it's another one that is hard to balance, or a tension that can't be fully resolved.
So I think the way it works is you have people coming from different places, and those people reject and accept. From different places, they reject and accept the answer. And so there's hippies who reject the answer. They throw off the squareness of society, but then are just in chaos of drugs and sex and everything else.
Right.
And they reject the truth, having created a vacuum from removing old idols in their lives. They still don't find the right answer, and they move into chaos. So you have people coming from there, and then you have people like the Joel Courtney character, who's his little military cadet outfit, and he's coming from a kind of an interesting journey of familial chaos into arbitrary order and rigidity to try to address that. And then he's taking that all off and becoming a hippie, and that doesn't give him the answer either. So he moves, kind of around the world until he actually embraces the true answer. And you see that coming from different places. You see, father-daughter relationship that's broken, father-daughter relationship that looks like a stereotype, but turns out to be a legitimate concern. You've got, you're bouncing around, and everybody's coming past the answer. So it's like, you think about the truth sitting at a crossroads, and there's roads, it's a big spaghetti intersection of all these different roads and people coming from different directions. And the truth is sitting there, and some people get there, find it, embrace it. Others just continue on.
And others are shouting at people on other roads.
Yeah.
Being like, hey, you can't
come and to the truth. There's all sorts of competitiveness, and there's proclamation and so on. And you've got Lonnie pushing too far and continuing on and bringing in too much. And, and you've got all that kind of tension. But it's really like all these different relationships and characters in their response to a moment of upheaval and this big question of what is the truth. And that is the theme, is what is the truth.
Okay. Kathy overtly states that, of course.
Yep, it's overtly stated, but it's stated in on the news when it's covering, the hippies, like, what is truth? And one of the hippies actually is even saying we're just trying to find the truth. Like, that's all we're trying to do. And everybody's on this big truth scavenger hunt from all these different perspectives. And so there's people who say they embrace the truth, sitting in their little church all buttoned up. And when it rolls in, they head out. They don't want anything to do with it because it's messier than they would like. There's all these different reactions to the truth, and different people trying to handle it and manage it, possess it, be it. And so there's unhealthy reactions and healthy reactions, and it's all in response to that question.
The Greg character is interesting. So this is, I guess, the movie's, he wrote the book, right? So Greg Laurie wrote his own story that the movie then came from. And watching him be handed a pastorate at 19 or whatever it is, to me as an uptight Reformed Presbyterian, I'm going to be like, I don't think that's great. But I don't know. I went back 2 centuries, a century and a half, and realized Spurgeon was handed his pastorate at 19. And I was reading through a collection of the late Victorian poets, and a lot of them like Christian poets were becoming pastors at that age.
Yep.
And it was interesting to me
and it frequently went badly.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I mean, there's kind of this weird, I mean, the parable of the sower is this way. It's so incautious.
Yeah.
You know, the way the seed
you just threw it
it's
everywhere.
just thrown everywhere. You've just thrown the seed everywhere. And don't you realize some of this is going to die? You know, some of this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Some of this is going to be shallow soil. Like, yes, absolutely. But throw that seed everywhere.
And then I think Chuck, when he got burned by Lonnie and then said Greg, pulled him out and then realized he was doing that.
Yep.
He was operating out of fear. I thought that was
interesting.
That was an interesting moment.
It really was. I do think that in times of intense change and upheaval, age and qualification kind of stops mattering.
Yeah.
You know, it's in chaos and apocalypse and disruption. You think about in World War II, you think about in the war for independence, were there ever underqualified people in command? Like, yes. And you don't get to look at the dude who's now in charge and be like, hey, you're too young for this. It's like, yeah, no doubt. But guess what? All the officers just blew up.
Right.
Like they're gone. He has to step up. And there's plenty of times like that where people are just the call of the moment and what the Holy Spirit decides to do, with you is not something we get to scold.
Right.
But there are plenty of times people say, God's telling me to do this. And you're like, yeah, whatever. No, he's not. I know him also. And he
would never say that.
And he wouldn't do that. But the problem is we frequently, and this is reflected in the film, try to paint God in our own image instead of shaping ourselves in his. And so we have scruples. And so we project them. God cares a lot about the carpet. God cares a lot about not damaging the carpet because I care about not damaging the carpet. It's like, no, he actually really, really doesn't care about your carpet.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
And that shows up and is great in the film. I think it's one of the best moments in the film is the old dude worried about the carpet. And then we show back up to find the pastor washing feet before they all come in so they don't ruin the carpet.
Right.
It's like, point made.
Right.
So it's a really good film and it is one of the best faith films. And I've heard strong cases made that Chariots of Fire is not a faith film. And it's entirely based on the fact that it's, an Academy Award winner and was not marketed as such. It was marketed as a great movie.
Right.
And the story of two sprinters, not a faith film. It did not get pushed that way. And then received accolades and secular success and everything else. So if that's the case, then this might be the best faith film that I already admitted I haven't really watched faith films.
Right.
So I'm hardly super qualified, but I would still say it's one of the best. And I would slot Chariots of Fire at the top.
Yeah. That's great. I think one of the themes that we talk about often is how do you let your kid take the next step without sandbagging them? And I felt like, the Chuck Gregg distinction.
Is that a Biden reference? Are you sandbagging them on the head or are you putting it at his feet?
Sandbags. What is the reference? That's like you slow yourself down.
I got sandbagged, says Joe Biden, after he falls down the Air Force
sandbagged. No, I wasn't referencing Joe, but I did see that video. He just fell down again, didn't he?
He did pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
And then there was cheering.
Oh man, we're in a bad place.
Yeah. So the old man fell down. And as I said, Raymond Arroyo commented, I was about to guzzle some coffee, but I won't finish his thought. When the press secretary said, he didn't have to see a doctor. It's like, he's 80. If you didn't have a doctor check him out after a bad fall, then you are negligent. This is trying to say that he didn't have to see the doctor after stacking on stage. It's like,
Oof.
Anyway, we're distracted now. Sandbagging. Don't sandbag your kids or your old presidents.
Sandbagged.
Sorry, totally distracted.
Yeah, no, now we lost the thought.
We lost it.
Yeah.
It's my fault.
No, it's good.
No, it's not.
No, the thought is just, one thing I've appreciated about a lot of the adults that I've got to know is they're not competitive with younger people.
Right.
Right. So instead of, like Chuck, they're willing to give Greg an opportunity.
Right.
Rather than that competitive nature, which Lonnie clearly felt with Chuck.
Yep.
You know, Lonnie did want it to be about him.
He wanted it to be a contest.
And I think that's where we should move to now. Like, what's the movie glosses over a lot of Lonnie's flaws. Like the real life
doesn't dive all the way into the darkness.
Sure, is much darker than that, and I think they handled it really well for the audience they wanted.
It was a light touch, but they didn't say this is all that's there. Right. They gave you the impression there's a lot more. There's demons there.
I mean, you watch the movie and you know they're going to get divorced, right? Lonnie and his wife, they just you can see that's a crack right there. Yeah. Even though the movie doesn't feel the need. What is Lonnie's flaw, or I guess what are we supposed to do with the Lonnie character? Maybe what does the film want us to do with the Lonnie character?
Well, I think the film honestly shows us that Lonnie confuses his own impulses with God's desire,
the Holy Spirit. Yeah,
and he's a man who, in his own darkness, did not have control of his passions, did not have control of his impulses, and we see that in how he functions up front as a minister, and they do reveal that he wants to attribute like divine authority to the motivations of his flesh. So grandstanding, selfishness, sexual temptation,
right?
Like he did not have. So tying this back to what we're seeing at the beginning, he did not have the ability to control himself. He did not have the ability to rein himself in and subject himself and submit himself to the clear authoritative word of Scripture, like where it's perfectly clear, and he would not disagree with it. He did not have the self-control, the ability to submit to it. And up front, when he was leading the show, stuff worked. He felt the movement of the Spirit, and he followed it, and he obeyed it, and there was great fruit. And then he felt the movement of his own flesh and attributed that to the Spirit, and wanted to follow that as well. And that's ultimately where his flaws was just a lack of self-control and a confusion of his desires with God's desires, which is as bad a mistake as you can make, and is one that I think that every human being can relate to.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's good. I thought also, too, it was when revolution or a reformation happens, like Jesus Revolution, I guess. Jesus Reformation. When it happens, it's a return to the Bible. And I thought the movie showed that really well, of saying,
it's
this is the word of God.
Yeah.
Let's open it together. And I think we pray that we're due for another one here.
Oh, we're due.
Just will it arrive on time?
We're due for a revival or destruction, one or the other.
Yep. And so let's start opening some Bibles.
We're in the tomb rotting, and we're either going to get called out, told to take the burial clothes off, or we're just gonna rot. It's one or the other.
Yep.
At this point.
Yeah.
They've had us in this hole for 3 days. Something's got to happen soon.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I thought, now I'm just the grab bag of things that I had thought while watching the movie, but I thought they did a good job of capturing that hippie life too, because it did not look enjoyable for long.
No.
And it was, you show up at Lonnie's house where they've taken over.
Yeah.
And Chuck and his wife wanting to have them move out. I mean, those are the feelings you have watching it.
Yep.
And they're accurate, as opposed to glorifying it in some kind of way that a lot of other hippie, why don't you just accept it? Let someone live in your house for as long as you want.
There's a shed that has been moved once. It used to be kind of in the heart of town next to this rental property, right adjacent on an alley next to the high school, Moscow High School. It's now out on the north side of town by a little farmhouse, and the inside is still entirely painted with cartoons and Bible verses that my uncle painted when he was, I think, still a teenager. And this was called God's Garage. And there's all these, punk kids in the 70s who were trying to smoke on campus, and the school was saying that they couldn't, and they had to go off campus to smoke. And so my grandfather told them, all these high school kids, you can smoke in my garage. And I'm sure all the other parents really appreciated this, but he's like, yeah, the smoking lounge is my garage. So you won't get busted for being underage smoking on the sidewalk, and you won't get busted for smoking on the school campus. You can go to Jim Wilson's garage off his alley and smoke. And it was all the smokers went into his garage to smoke. And the deal was that I think it was like no cussing and you had to listen. And it's like, so he just, hit the smoker's brakes and my uncle painted the inside. And there's a very real way in which that was the beginning in our town. So if we go pre-body shop, we go back before my dad was just banging on a guitar up front, before that hippie pastor took off, like back that up. And we end up finding a bunch of punks smoking in a garage.
It's a very Jesus Revolution moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Because for sure, all the parents would be like, "No, don't let them smoke in your
my
garage."
grandfather looking past the smoking and looking at the more important thing of what they really need.
A field ripe for harvest.
Yeah, and so he just was preaching at a bunch of smokers and provided the smoke break. And so I would love to acquire this shed at some point and get it onto my property, but it's sitting comfortably where it is. And we took a camera in not too many years ago and documented on the inside of it, but it's weird. That's kind of like there's that first congregation, the first group really getting preached to. There's a bunch of high school kids smoking illegally in my grandfather's garage. And that kind of messiness, that is historically the way God has operated.
Yeah.
It's never tidy. It's always like something fermenting.
So here's this. We can end with this. So one of the questions of the film is, if that messiness is what, the Spirit is a field, a plowed field ready to grow a huge harvest, or the movie asks, what would it take for you to be desperate? Right. That's Lonnie's original question to Chuck, I think. Do we need to pursue that desperation more? Those of us, me, much more, not at all a hippie, right? Pretty buttoned up as far as that goes.
A little bit of a hipster.
A little bit. Hipster trad, as our critics have said. How do you do that move? Because it would be, just because I think my answer would be that it's a fallacy to say that because disorganization, desperation is what leads to the, it's not the thing that the Spirit needs.
This is always the Charles Finney approach is, do you try to conjure something up and do you affirm the consequent?
Yeah.
And say God is not tidy. When the Spirit moves, it's never tidy. Therefore let's not be tidy. Let's be a mess. And maybe that'll get him to move. And it's like, no, that's just not how this works.
Right.
So it's, we can't affirm the consequent like that. It's fundamentally fallacious to say, let's be really wildly disruptive and chaotic. Like, cause that also ends in sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like the walls come down. When God really like takes a city, the walls fall down. When he decides the city is mine. And so we don't want to just say, therefore we want to kick down all walls. Let's go just knock walls down everywhere we go. It's like, to what end? There's plenty of times we're supposed to be building. There's times when God comes and everything comes tumbling down and Joshua fit the battle of Jericho and everything's exciting and tumultuous and chaotic because the Israelites are pouring in and, and Jericho is taken, but that's just not how we're supposed to go around. You don't have the 14-year-old kid trying to destroy the kitchen wall and knock it down because that's what God did to Jericho. So we should do it too. It's like, that's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not supposed to just be agents of chaos and disruption.
Great.
So anyway, there we go. And I'd say after this, we're going to talk about Jojo Rabbit. This will be close together. So you won't be waiting long. We stalled because I was holding out hope that we'd get John. It turned out we didn't need him. We did a great job.
Yeah. Why did we even try to get him?
But then now we're bouncing down to Jojo Rabbit. Probably next week we'll talk about Jojo Rabbit. So get it watched. If you already have, you can watch our next film, which we can announce today.
Yeah.
Escape from Pretoria. So starring Daniel Radcliffe. Sorry.
That's Harry Potter for those of you who don't follow
Escape
actors.
from Pretoria. So that one is our next lamp, and I'm picking it because most of you probably have not seen it.
Yep.
And it's, we'll talk about it. We'll talk through it.
Yeah. More advice next time.
Yeah. That one and Escape from Pretoria does not need filters. So there you go. Yeah. I don't think you'll find it filtered. It's great. It's a great little film. I'm looking forward to talking about it.
There we go. You know that now is the time when I like to thank you for being a SASF listener and also show you something cool that we've been working at Canon Press. And what I'm holding right now, if you're only listening in audio, you won't be able to see this. You'll have to listen to the sound. But if you're watching on Canon Plus and if you're a subscriber, you can see I'm holding a Christ is Lord box. Go to christislord.com to see why we're trying to put up a billboard that says Christ is Lord in your area and why that's making certain sad sections of the internet very upset. Of course, it's true. And so we got some fun stuff inside. Again, if you're just listening, hear the wonderful sounds. We got stickers. We got bumper stickers. We have, they say Christ is Lord too. We've got a wartime songbook. But of course, the most important part of this box is the Mere Christendom book, which I have to say is one of the most pretty books you're going to see. Check out that foil on the cover, the elegant cross on it, and of course, a signature from Douglas Wilson. What is Mere Christendom? Well, basically, it's the declaration of the book that Christ conquered the West the first time, and this is how he's going to do it again. So, christislord.com, buy the book, check out the billboards, and enjoy. You know that now is the time when I like to thank you for being a SASF listener and also show you something cool that we've been working at Canon Press. And what I'm holding right now, if you're only listening in audio, you won't be able to see this. You'll have to listen to the sound. But if you're watching on Canon Plus and if you're a subscriber, you can see I'm holding a Christ is Lord box. Go to christislord.com to see why we're trying to put up a billboard that says Christ is Lord in your area and why that's making certain sad sections of the internet very upset. Of course, it's true. And so we got some fun stuff inside. Again, if you're just listening, hear the wonderful sounds. We got stickers. We got bumper stickers. We have, they say Christ is Lord too. We've got a wartime songbook. But of course, the most important part of this box is the Mere Christendom book, which I have to say is one of the most pretty books you're going to see. Check out that foil on the cover, the elegant cross on it, and of course, a signature from Douglas Wilson. What is Mere Christendom? Well, basically, it's the declaration of the book that Christ conquered the West the first time, and this is how he's going to do it again. So, christislord.com, buy the book, check out the billboards, and enjoy.